Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. Now I know what you're thinking. What's that noise? I don't mean the horn that just tooted outside my window. What I mean is the sound of silence, because there's no one here besides me, Dan Allen, doing your intro. Normally I'm joined by someone else, normally either Larry or James or Amelia, but not right now. I will be joined by Amelia to do the wrap up and to reflect on the wonderful words that we are about to hear of Greg Birkumshaw, who's an incredible composer who I've actually worked with before. And we're going to be exploring all things scoring movies and what the process is like and how you even get into scoring. So if you're a musically minded person, fantastic. If you're not, I think you're going to find this fascinating and a real sort of curtain peeler, as it were, to sort of go behind the scenes and find out what that process is like when a composer comes on board and all sorts of exciting things. So without any further ado, I don't want to preamble all the things we're about to amble. So here is Greg Birkumshaw. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Good, thank you. How's it going, Dan?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good. So for those that don't know, Greg and I have actually worked together on a feature, which was very exciting.
Yes.
It Came From Below, which has been mentioned on several actual podcast episodes before as my attempt to sort of maximize my exposure on this platform and just plug myself as much as possible. But Greg did an amazing job with the music. Well, you actually shared a clip from the film recently on That's Instagram, right. And it was like a magical trip down memory lane, and it was even like that sequence was even better than I thought it was. I don't want to like blow our own trumpets, but yeah, I'm gonna. Just like your work on it was like so cool, and it was so much fun seeing sort of all those scenes come to life. So thank you for that. I hope it was as fun for you to work on as it was for me to sort of get sent stuff that you're working on.
It was fantastic. I mean, like we know, we'll probably speak about later. I mean, it's the story you sent me. You know, it was fantastic. You know, but yeah, it was good film, Dan. I'm
thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's called It Came From Below. And it's available to rent on Amazon Prime.
And the score is also available on all platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's on Spotify. Is it Apple Music as well and stuff?
So when do we start bringing the shame into this conversation?
We don't, Greg. We're shameless.
Okay.
But in fairness, I would actually recommend that because, I mean, I think the music is phenomenal. Like, I really do. And I think when you're writing, so for any like writers or directors that are listening, maybe even actors, building playlists, I think is like really an effective tool to get into a project. Like whenever I start working on a new film, I build a playlist of either scores or songs that I think tonally match with the project I'm working on. And it just becomes like a way to immerse myself in that. Do you do that with working on projects, or is there then too much musical influence, or do you wait to take the lead from the director on that regard?
It is. I mean, obviously, every film is different depending on the director or just what kind of a genre film. But I mean, so you and I, we worked on It Came From Below. We worked kind of differently.
Available on Amazon Prime.
Which is Amazon, and so whilst you were going through the editing stage, I was applying you with sounds. Do you remember?
I do. Yeah, I love that way of working.
The breathing sounds of an accordion, which I remember you and I found quite exciting at the beginning because how many films use an accordion, particularly horror? You know.
Yeah.
Although saying that, what's the film that came out? The Lighthouse.
Did someone copy us?
Yeah, at the Lighthouse. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we copied him but yeah, I mean, it wasn't intentional. But yeah, so that was good. But so yeah, that was a different method. That was enjoyable. The way you
sort of building and collecting sounds that would work, because often I suppose, like, you know, just to sort of lay out the process in a lot of modern filmmaking, right? It's the film gets edited, and then there's loads of temp score, and I know there was some temp score from other films on this film, but then that temp score then gets replaced, often with stuff very similar, because that type of track or a song with like that particular instrument works for that sequence, and then you sort of, in a way, like remake it, which I know is a big thing in composer world at the moment, because does that often feel like a limited way of working, or how do you find it?
Well, I take the temp track basically is the way I love to work is boundaries. I love to have a boundary and then purposefully break it, to assess it. So temp tracks for me are fantastic because my gambit, if you like, or my game to play is to do better than that temp track. And obviously, when I get the temp track, it gives me a level to beat. So yeah, I love working with temp track, but obviously, like yourself, when you were taking those sound clips we were talking about earlier, things I was sending you were, in a sense, part of the composing team, because you were layering. Do you remember you were layering parts here and overlapping things, and then you'd send that idea to me, and I would clean it up, and I would rearrange it, add things, take things away, manipulate it. So you and I at that point were purely creating a score that could only exist for that film.
By essentially using our own sounds as temp track, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is rare. I mean, I'm doing I just finished a film recently, which was a similar kind of endeavour, which is actually kind of off the back of It Came From Below, available on Amazon. But but it's good. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do all films like that, to be honest. Yeah, it would get a bit stale. I'd need someone to inject the film with something I wasn't expecting. Sure. I mean, as a first viewer of the film, if you like, I want to be surprised as well.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's sort of like, I think when you're writing as well, it's a similar process of, in a way, I don't envy Christopher Nolan's position, which is that he essentially gets either a blank check or an incredibly large check and says, make whatever you want, Yeah. And sometimes that is just, there's too many possibilities. There's too many things that you could put on that empty page. Whereas sometimes having some parameters and having some things to bounce off of actually is far more creatively stimulating than having endless possibility.
Exactly. Being told what not to do is far more inspiring than being told what you can do,
Yeah. Like writing a haiku, I imagine. I haven't I haven't actually written one, but obviously very specific set of rules that make a haiku.
That's it.
And then when you'll then have, it's like walls, like don't do this or don't do this, or like make it like this, and then you're like a bumper car, sort of driving through like dodgems and sort of bouncing off of things, and then suddenly the path that you create through that arena is going to be essentially much more exciting, I suppose. That's
it, and always bespoke,
Yes,
which is
that's what you want. You want sort of original sound as much as possible. I suppose you want people to remember the score, I suppose. So, I mean, when do you normally get brought on to a project? Like, obviously, you mentioned you were obviously creating sounds for me and obviously for this film slightly earlier than you might do. But are you normally attached to a project, but then nothing happens until there's an edit, or do you normally get brought on once there's an edit, and then do people start looking for a composer?
So I mean, obviously the standard would be post. It's all post. So the picture has been locked. That's and then basically there's going to be very little movement around that, because obviously rewrites, as far as when everybody's waiting for this film to just to wrap, rewrites can be a drain on morale as well as obviously time.
Is this rewrites in post? So as in there's going to be pickups, or is this like rewrites in terms of before it's even shot.
No pickups. You could have an edit. You could score this, because the thing is with music is, I mean, I can't remember who said it, but there's this thing that if you freeze a frame from a film, there are so many different cues you can take visually that explain what's going on. The story unfolds itself in your head, but sound has to exist in time. So obviously, if that time is manipulated and changed, therefore the narrative of the sound has to change with it. So if you're building up to this big sting or something, building the tension, and someone says, we'll just cut that by 5 seconds, it's not as simple, particularly if you're mapping it to the scene and you've got all these complicated tempo changes. It's not as simple as just cutting it and moving it backwards, because then you interfere what came before and obviously what comes after. So
there must be another. I'm just imagining a gazillion tracks on your in your music editor of all these different instruments working together, building towards a crescendo at a certain point, and then they're like, I know I said it wouldn't change, but boy, it's changed.
But the thing is, there is an excitement in that too when you get cut through, and once you get past that kicking and screaming of realising you've had to practically rescore that 10-second piece either side of the change. There is an excitement because it's for the better. It's for the better story, and that's the thing. If anyone listening wants to have anything to do with the post process. You absolutely have to relinquish ego. Because, it's not going to get you anywhere, both professionally and artistically, particularly in a collaborative medium as film in this sense.
Yeah, and I think that's just such good advice, for the creative industries. I'm sure for other industries as well, it's just nothing's personal and everything is for the betterment of the film. And if you make that change difficult, then all you're doing is making the process more difficult to ultimately get to something that the team feels like is going to make it a better end result, which is ultimately what you want, right? You want your music being as on the best film possible,
Exactly. So you're not. I mean, you could say you're working for everybody, but there is a selfish kind of. If the film's fantastic, then it doesn't matter if the score even lacks because it's attached to something so strong,
for sure.
Which again, kind of puts a point basically, of understanding where you shouldn't score to. I mean, it's easy, particularly with animation, when you're given a cut and it's silent, completely silent. It's very easy to find the silence awkward. And you need to fill that with score. But again, you've got to think for the film, think for how the director sees it, check in and say, is this too much, or how can we push that? Yeah.
Is that like your ears, your sort of musical ears, like popping up and being like, I hear some silence here. I must fill it with some magical musical sounds. That's
it. Yeah, you sort of think, this is my time to shine, but you sometimes, and this
la da 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 da. Here comes the violins.
But I mean that's the best thing about this collaborative work is because if you're with a good director, which I experienced so many times with you, is they'll come in and they'll say to you, I love the score you're doing here, and they'll explain why the silence should be there. Like when you've spent. I mean, obviously you can bargain. I could say to you, just let me try it. But in the end, if it works, you will know when once you've got it out of your system. If you scored it, you'll stand back. A part of you might say, "But I loved that bit in that cue." But the director will say, listen to the silence, listen to how it's making and a good director like yourself, you will agree, you'll relinquish it. Maybe you can use it as credit music, maybe you can put it on an album as like a bonus track, but you do have to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately, I suppose what you're getting at is, a good director isn't just going to say, no, it's not going there because it's rubbish, because that's almost definitely not true. It's because that sequence requires that silence, so that maybe even the music has even greater impact when it does land slightly
Absolutely.
later in the scene or the sequence, I suppose. But with obviously sometimes you have temp tracks, you want the sort of things to bounce across. Do you go and find and sort of forage for the sounds and soundtracks that you think may be appropriate for a particular project as well? Or do you wait for that stuff to come to you, or does it sort of vary project to project?
I think anyone in any art they want to be that person who creates the thing that nobody's heard, nobody's seen, nobody's thought of. To basically for something to appear from left field without any build-up. But that is impossible. Everything has to come from somewhere.
It's that realization that art is iterative, I suppose.
100%. 100% is that there are no new ideas, only innovations upon existing ideas. But yeah, so like you're saying, I'll watch the film through. I might try a few things out to try and get that bug of I want to be original. But ultimately, I need inspiration. And whether that is, visual inspiration from somewhere else, I can watch a few films or something that the film reminds me of and see how they tackled the scenes. But yeah, immersing yourself in whatever it is you do, other people's work is paramount because, for example, it came from below, the idea of using the accordion, that came from, who would we listen to? We listened to like Pauline, Oliver Ross, we listened to...
it was a lot from the Dark soundtrack, I think, in there as well.
Dark, yeah. Nordheim, Ben Frost, yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually that's something important to talk about. Is a colour, a pigment.
Interesting.
So for us, we started with sounds of tapping in cavernous spaces and the sound of this accordion. Because obviously it breathes and swells. There's a lot of times we use that without any notes being played. It's just the sound of the accordion creaking and breathing as the bellows move, which, it is like the cave. That is how we imagined, this cavernous area, breathing and bellowing. So going back to your sort of like found sounds or... I like to start with a bizarre sound. I like to see how you could create a bizarre sound, put it over a scene. You'll know soon enough if it sticks or not, but if it sticks, that's it. You've got your theme,
And then that's what is going to give that film its identity, I suppose, in a way. Or that's something that, however sort of maybe more traditional the score gets at certain points, you've still got something to weave in that is going to make the soundtrack distinctly belong to that film and not just be interchangeable, I suppose, with other films.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the... So I'm trying to look up. So I've forgotten
where do you go looking for that sound? Like I know for us, we talked about having sort of organic analog sounds to contrast the fact that there was this sci-fi element. But do you look through the script for inspiration for what that sort of weird new sound or instrument could be?
Obviously different for every project and for every director. But do you recall what were our first conversations when we came to score?
They were beautiful. That's what they were, Greg.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, what did we do? We talked about? I know what we talked about. We talked about this following of an idea.
Yeah.
Do you remember? So an idea is brought about, and you follow it, and you following it brings another idea about, and it's this kind of snake eating its own tail, kind of repeating. So I think we may have started with sounds that could be repetitive but without being boring.
Yeah.
So that, I think, very initially informed the score, which was this kind of,
Yeah, we wanted stuff that was sort of really deep, guttural, sort of low-end stuff that you could sort of build and you wouldn't necessarily even know you're listening to score yet, but it's already having an effect on you. And then you've got that sort of, as you said, like the tapping sounds as well, which I think were sort of really effective in that. And with you've worked on, what different genres have you worked on? I wondered if you could tell us about.
So drama.
I know you've done a few horror films.
Yeah, done a few horror films. I think the sound design element of my process lends very well to horror and sci-fi. But yeah, I've done obviously your dramas. I've done romantic sort of thing. I mean, there's a lot. I've done a lot of animation, a lot of sort of Japanese, Chinese animation.
Yeah,
I've done. Obviously,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn from there because everything you do is so bare, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
but obviously the process is still exactly the same. You know, follow a story, follow a narrative, follow the character. It's really hard.
Is there less likelihood of things changing? I just wonder in animation, like, because they've locked down exactly how many frames they're going to do of each thing, would you still get the sort of cutting out 5 seconds in animation as well?
So right, yeah. So you do get it. So I did a film quite a few years ago where it was inspired a lot by sort of Carl Stalling, that kind of Looney Tunes, that kind of, you know.
Oh yeah,
following the footsteps, following, you know, things that you see on the film. Exactly. Yeah, like that's called it's called Mickey Mousing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But so that, yes, I had to set up a very, very, very detailed timesheet.
Yeah.
Which was, and obviously I could be going, before even writing a single note, I'd be going backwards and forwards with the director, saying, do we hit this? Do we need to hit that? Because obviously at this point, every single, I mean, you could have 4-5 hits, sync points within a second, you know, because there wasn't much sound design in this short film. It was all implied with the score, just like it would have been in the old Disney days.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, yeah. If someone comes back and says there's 5 seconds gone for that, you need to know that soon, very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is tricky. You can cut and splice, but yeah, you'll always be able to tell. I think.
Yeah. Or just sort of like crossfading to the bit later on in your music.
That's it. I mean, obviously,
anyway.
Sometimes a hard cut works, doesn't it? You know,
yeah.
It has its own energy. I mean, you do see it in some of like the Cole Sullivan and Scott Bradley stuff, like a quick change, but I don't know, that usually adds some kind of tension or humour in itself. Yeah. But yeah, continuity is important.
Yeah, in particular on animation or just across all the different genres?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm probably a terrible person to interview on these things purely because I don't have a single mind for many things. So if someone comes up to me and tells me a better reason, if I can understand it, then yes, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a good idea to have continuity within live action, and I think what continuity doesn't tend to affect is exhibition pieces, actually, which is like for art installments, because they're quite free flowing. You know, you're usually hired for that purpose.
Yeah, but does the process change, I suppose, across the different genres? Like, or is it always the same approach?
Oh, what as in how to start the score or approach?
Yeah,
I
suppose so. Yeah, or just I suppose you don't know what you don't know. So I'm like, you know, I I suppose my references obviously would be different, approaching a different genre. But beyond that, I might actually be interested in getting references that don't belong in the genre, just to try and inject something new and give a slightly unique spin on that particular genre. So I love sort of reaching outside of the immediate sort of field of references. But I wondered, like, for you, whether how much, do the instruments you allow yourself change from genre to genre, or is it really just really independent to that one particular film, so you don't really look at it as like a genre breakdown, I suppose?
100%. I mean, I think you and I spoke about this, because every story is a drama, isn't it? Yeah. So the first thing you do, start any story, if you want to get really into it, start pulling it apart, start as a drama. Understand where the characters are struggling, understand where they're reaching, understand where their goals are, and where the antagonists are subverting them. And then you can start putting in other genres, jump scares, if it's a horror. It's complex, but it's also a very free field. So, yes, it does change between genre. It does change, but that doesn't mean it isn't all coming from the same place.
So it's almost like the results change, but the process still feels the same as you sort of work your way through it. I suppose.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So, would you say like budget and stuff like that has more of an impact on the process than genre?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, if you're hired and someone says we want this score to be like a Marvel film, this big
the ones where they hired an entire orchestra
to produce, yeah. I mean, there then comes limitations, because I have to mock up the sound of an orchestra by I'll be playing. You'll have something called a virtual instrument, which you'll know about, Dan, in your music creating. But so you write and perform each violin piece, each viola, cello, bass, until you've got your string section. And you do the same with your brass and sections, and your woodwind sections, percussion, until eventually you amass like what is a 120-piece orchestra, for free, basically.
Put some reverb on it and you're good.
Yeah, exactly. And there, there's actually a lot can be hidden in a large orchestral piece, which is probably going to sound sacrilege. But
are you talking about like bad notes, or are you talking about like just what sort of things get hidden?
So the performance can be hidden. We're very used to, if you've got 120 players, we're very used to hearing them en masse. We're used to that sound. We're used to this congregative kind of sound of many people performing to create one sound, which is, what music is. But if you perform something like my personal favourite kind of scores are the very intimate ones, like Mark Corvin's The Witch.
Yes.
Or I'm trying to think of more of these.
Beautiful score.
Yeah, fantastic score. A lot of sort of John Bryan stuff. What's his name? Brian Ritzel. Is it Brian Ritzel who did 20 Days a Night? Is that the film?
Ooh, I think 30 Days a Night.
30 Days. That's it. 30 Days a Night. Those two in particular, three. They love to explore the sound of an instrument. So record it super close, and every accidental knock or underbow or overbow of a string, these things are part of the score. So you have a big orchestra, everyone's playing in tutti, everyone's playing at the same time, all put into the same effect. But when it's just one person singularly playing, every breath you hear move past the flute or every bow pull, that becomes part of the score. It can be unnerving, or it can be beautiful and serene. So again, like you're saying, even if the budget is super high, I tend to prefer to fall towards the intimacy of a smaller ensemble.
Interesting. And I suppose that's your artistic taste. That's why, different composers would give you different results for the same film, which I think is amazing, because that's where like taste and influence and the things that you find attractive in music are going to have a play and effect on those end results,
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you ever catch yourself though trying to come up with like the Greg Birkumshaw like version of a song? It's like, it's just not me enough, or is that just not a question? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, there are times. It's usually if you're given a temp track, and the director is, if they're super stuck on it. Basically, I want that track, but I can't afford to buy it. That is when you have this kind of battle of your ego, your own ego, does it sound enough like me? How can I make this sound like me? But if you that's an uphill battle. I mean, you've got to battle that when you're there, That's sort of like the artist sort of in your own head sort of battles, I suppose, isn't it? That you end up facing no matter what profession you're in. Is there enough me in it? Am I doing it different enough? Like, how can I put a spin on it? When the reality is that it's inevitably going to have your spin, because this is coming out of someone with years of taste, influence, and passion that has led you to where you are, I suppose. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are times when you're very lucky when you get to actually influence the film. So the film that I did actually straight after It Came From Below was it's a film called Gods of Their Own Religion, and it's a film by a director called Naeem Mahmood. Now he's worked with some big names, fantastic director, very very into the art house and the avant-garde and surrealism. How to push the audience. They've got to work for the story, which is fantastic. But the film itself was being shot during the first lockdown. The whole film was improvised. So it's an hour and, how long is the film? Hour and 40 minutes about. And the whole thing was improvised. There was no script. There was no funding. There was no time constraints. There was nothing.
Start scene one.
This was a true. That they didn't know if scene one was scene one. I remember I got a short clip, and it's these three people sitting in a restaurant, and everybody around them has masks. It's very eerily lit. These three characters are the only people without masks. So there's this political agenda, this very heavy lean, which is these people that are succumbing to the mask and these people that aren't. Now, obviously, at that point, that was a very heavy-handed, if you like, short. It was looked at first to be a short film, an atmospheric piece. But as time went on, they got the actors back together, and they would film another shoot. And on that shoot, they would say, "Do you remember when we did this in the scene the other day? What if we brought some of that into here?" And that's what they'd do, and that is how every scene progressed. They would do it. It didn't matter what order these things was happening. But one of my favourite parts about this film is you actually see one of the lead actors, his haircut changes, almost from scene to scene. But because the film is kind of removed from reality, it has this. And the other lead actress, an actress called Kid Naida, she's incredible. She's incredible actress. But her hair changes colour. Her just everything about her changes from scene to scene, and it creates these little vignettes and this kind of lift from reality where people can morph and change, and their attitude and their stance sort of exhibits externally. Which is great for the audience to follow. You sort of know how this person is feeling. You don't need to write it within the dialogue because there is no dialogue. There are, I think, maybe 4 lines maybe on whole spoken by the main characters, and then one character, the antagonist, has these kind of voiceover dialogues. But otherwise, it's almost an entirely non-dialogue film. So it's very important, the way these characters looked and how they moved from scene to scene. But going back to what I was saying, we wanted to reflect this heavily improvised ethos, if you like, within the sound, within the score. So from scene to scene being shot, I would write things and the director would maybe get on the phone to me and I would load up some sounds on the keyboard and he would narrate for 10 minutes, just scenes, just emotions, feelings, abstracts, concepts, and I would just play and improvise, and then he would go away after that, and I'd manipulate it a little bit, change things, add things, EQs, all this kind of stuff, and then he would take that away, and he would then shoot to this piece of music, or edit to the piece of music. And then I would get that back, rather similar to how you and I did, and then would edit that, would tailor it to the intricacies that are needed.
And I think shooting to the music is like, such a powerful thing, even for the actors as well, to sort of understand the tone and energy that their performances are going to be a part of. There must be so sort of cool being on an exciting and sort of very different project, I imagine, compared to some of your other projects with that unique process. Obviously you mentioned loading sounds up onto the keyboard. Does the how many of the instruments do you play, and how many do you program? Like, if for young people that wanted to maybe become a composer, how many instruments should they be able to play, I suppose is sort of the question. But I suppose more coming at it from the sense of how many can you play and what's your process? Because I make music, but I can't play a single instrument, and I just have to program the computer one note at a time, which I wouldn't recommend. But
then do you not think, and I know this is going to sound a bit base, but do you not think that is your instrument? Your programming are your fingers, and the computer itself is the instrument, the soundboard or whatever it is. No, but
I'm going to sleep easy tonight, Greg.
No, try not to. But it really is true. I staunchly believe, of many things that I'm unsure of, I do staunchly believe that the way we are educated, and I don't want to throw people off here at school, get through school. I didn't do very well in music GCSE because I'm dyslexic, I've got OCD. I had a lot of these things that they didn't meet the criterias of someone to get through school easily.
Schools aren't very welcoming of different sort of...
They are not to breed... education...
neurodiversity and stuff.
That's it. Education is about telescoping into any academic situation. So you start off, and at school, at play school, you're learning how to put your fingers onto paper, and then by the time you get into primary school, you're learning what the term history means, what science means, what maths means, and then you start to get to secondary school. And it's how can you use maths? How can you manipulate these things? And then when you get to obviously your GCSEs, you're zooming in again. You're choosing the subjects that interest you. Science, music, maths. Again, you're zooming in, and then you get to college, and again zooming in. It's usually one subject you're learning, and you're learning what it is about that subject. And then you get to obviously university, and it's a particular slice of that subject, maybe a genre, for example. And then masters, when I did my masters, very specific. It was the sounds to move an image. And then within your masters, you write your dissertation and you go in even smaller, even more pinpointed.
Yeah. Such an interesting way of looking at like advanced academia, as like you don't just get more broad knowledge, you just get you do zoom in on a very particular aspect, so then there becomes loads left around you that you don't know, but there's like a particular area that you start to know really
That's
well.
It's I always think of it, it's like looking at like a pointillism sort of painting. From a distance, you understand what it is, but as you get closer and closer, you start to realise the technique, and then you get even closer and you start obsessing over a particular point, that's been painted, and how that interacts with everything else. I mean, it can get very, it can send you down spirals, but then that's what, again, coming back to film, that's what a director does. You can get caught in a self-deprecating spiral of how close do I get to this, or how far do I pull back? But yeah, I mean, it's, we're the sheep, the director's the sheepdog, it's, you need someone to guide you.
Yeah.
But I forget what your question was.
It was how many instruments do you play, Greg?
Oh yeah. So going right back to that, you don't need to learn any instruments like yourself, Dan.
Yeah.
Just make sound. I mean, if you haven't got anything to make sound with, do it with your voice. They're fantastic composers. They do everything with their voice, like Monk. You got obviously Bobby McFerrin, just fantastic writers. I myself, if you're, obviously keyboard instruments, your standard kind of a keyboard instrument, so piano, organ, synthesizers, accordion, but then stringed instruments, guitars, bass. What else have we got? Cello.
For those, obviously you can't see because this is a podcast, but Greg basically has the most musical room I've ever seen in my life, and it just feels like such a source of creativity and inspiration, just because you're always just surrounded by so many cool instruments and things. Some of them I don't recognise.
But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I do. I love misusing instruments. That is usually the best way. I'm going off a bit more of a tangent, but the best way to get past a writer's block. They always say the best way to start writing is to start writing. And obviously, to translate that into music, I always find if I'm stuck, if I'm using the same scales, if I'm using the same guitar pedals to manipulate the sound, or I'm using I'm falling back on old haunches. The best thing I find is to misuse something. To not approach it in a musical way, to approach it with the frustration that you have, and you'll come up with something. There'll be a sound at the time you didn't realise. You'll just push record, play with the instrument or whatever it is, the sound making device, and listen back, and you'll realise you create. It's like when you hear a kid. You could be you could be a maestro on piano, but you'll hear like some 3-year-old come up and they'll place their hands on the keys, make a noise, and you'll think, how did I not think of that? You'll hear something.
God, they're a genius.
That's it. You'll hear something in this prodigy.
Play something again, Jimmy.
But you'll hear something because they didn't have any expectations of what they wanted to do. They just wanted to play. Literally, that's what you're doing with an instrument. You're playing, and that's where the best ideas come from for me. The best genesis of sound comes from just hitting something, being a kid or being a Neanderthal, or just approaching it without concern.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think, as you're saying, it's a universal approach. To how do you start writing, just start writing sort of thing. There's a few different tricks and stuff that you can do. Writing down a bunch of ideas that it won't be. So just literally throwing down bad ideas is often a good approach, because then suddenly your brain is engaged with the question.
Exactly.
Of what should something be. So just having tricks to make you do something, and inevitably you might end up far closer to what you want or what it should be. Well, you will, in comparison to if you just don't do anything. So no, it's a really useful trick. I wonder, Greg, obviously you talked about your engagement with school and stuff. Like, how did you get into music? Were you musical very early on? So were you musical before school?
So my father, I grew up on a lot of non-musical music, if you like. So obviously you got people. My dad had a huge appreciation for sound's sake. He's a very frustrated musician. You know, he attempts to play keyboard, but his expectations are never met. You know, he's an inventor and.
So does he cry when he listens to you play music? He's just like. So proud.
This is it. I mean, so he falls asleep. He says his best compliment to a piece of music or an artist is if he can fall asleep to it. Because
that's the thing is, I completely get it, but it sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, well, I mean, we went. I remember quite a few years ago, we went and saw David Gilmour live, which was like,
sure.
He and I were just so excited, huge fans of Pink Floyd, and my dad fell asleep through like maybe 3 songs. But to my dad, that was a compliment, because it was hitting him on a deeper level, a level which didn't need him to answer. All it needed was for him to go in. You know, does that make sense? To absorb it.
100%.
So yeah, I was brought up listening to Cage, like John Cage, to Xenakis. I'm trying to a lot of sort of radio, you know, BBC. Radiophonic Workshop? I'm struggling to remember, but and I remember one of the first records that I obsessively played was the BBC horror sound effects. So
interesting.
So yeah, I mean, it's like two sides. It's obviously on vinyl. 2 sides of just apes going crazy, women screaming, chainsaws, swing blades, just blood sort of gurgling.
What an interesting vinyl! Like, why did they make that? I'm so glad they did. But in my head, I'm like, who's the audience? But I guess you were the audience.
Well, that's it. It's people. Yeah, people who just want to hear. But so my start with music goes further back to stories, basically, which is I was very lucky. I knew I've always known what I wanted to do in life, which was to create sound, like even as a kid, and to put it to image. So you have always had that visual angle. That's it.
To sound.
It's like, you know, the kid that picks up an imaginary gun and, you know, or someone who is driving a car and, you know, they make the noises. It's bringing a physics of real life, which in this case is sound, and manipulating it for your own narrative. And I suppose, I mean, I suppose that my grandma would always come over every week and tell us a new story she'd thought up or written, you know. And in my head...
So creativity was sort of very present in your childhood, you'd say?
100%, yeah. Which I was so lucky to have. But with these stories, I'd be told them, and if I wasn't verbally making the sound effects, in my head I was, you know, the creaking of trees. My grandma's stories were more often than not quite macabre. But then that led on to obviously the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Then that led on to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. fantastic. And then it's this obsession. I wanted to be the world's first magician. You know, I wanted to make
what
music.
What a great desire! Yeah.
And I wanted to do magic tricks. But again, when you look at that, it's the narrative. It's telling the narrative of an illusion. And I wanted to have sound.
Have you seen Shin Lim? He doesn't make music, but his performances are quite musical as a magician.
No.
Google, after this, Google Shin Lim. He was on, it's got millions and millions of views. He was on Fool Us, which is the Penn and Teller show.
Oh, yeah.
And he just, his whole performance is synced up to music, and it's really artistic and phenomenal. I feel like you're gonna love it.
Well, because I mean that is interesting, because that brings in one of the best things about working within the audio-visual medium is he can rely. I mean, obviously, as long as you're a person of hearing, he can rely on the fact that sound is going to propel as much of a diversion and as a narrative as any of his sleight of hand.
Yeah,
which is fantastic. Which is the same you and I were doing for our film. You know, you lead somebody one way, but the visuals are leading the other. You know,
100%.
Obviously, it's a coalescing at the end where, I mean, our brains are linear. Well, at least they try to be. And if there's a tension built within having two opposing narratives, so you know, and the brain appreciates there's like an explosion that happens when the two connect again.
Yeah.
So if one goes off one way, one goes off the other, you're in a state of flux. You're trying to follow both narratives. You're trying to understand why what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're feeling, they don't meet. You know, they're not connecting. But that moment when suddenly you realise when they do connect, that is so powerful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful technique as well in film, actually, which I think doesn't get used enough these days, where the music can be used to show something that the visuals aren't showing you. More often than not. Yeah, and more often than not, you know, you do want to, you know, if you've got an intense scene, you do want to add intensity through music, but there is such a good opportunity in really key moments throughout films to contrast maybe what the images are saying and actually do something even more surprising and inevitably more powerful. And you can really say something unique, whether that's having like a score come back in that really creates a sense of unity and linking it to an earlier piece, even if your brain hasn't quite computed, oh, that's the music from that earlier scene. It's gonna stir something inside you that could do that.
That's it. I mean, there's Hitchcock. I'm gonna butcher the way he said it, in paraphrasing, but he gave this scenario of a woman at a kitchen sink. You probably noticed, Dan. And she's cleaning the dishes, and there's this beautiful, serene music. You know, almost like a Peer Gynt. Let's just imagine Peer Gynt, and you know, you can feel the sun rising, and you can feel her contentment. I mean, this is like a really old school, analogy. This is like 50s woman at its best, but But if you take that same scene, the woman's cleaning the dishes, she's got a nice, serene smile. What if you put something foreboding underneath it? Low strings, just kept it minimal, low strings as you zoomed in on her, smiling, cleaning the dishes. You're going to start wondering whether she poisoned her husband or whether she... Yeah, it's something untoward is going to come to your mind, and that's something that was neither said nor shown within the script or within the images. And like you said, that is the best, in my opinion, the best interplay between audio visual narrative is showing something, letting people think one thing, but with just a slight manipulation with sound, they're thinking something completely different. It's magic. That is magic, you know.
I agree. Greg, we've got time for just two last very quick questions, I'm afraid.
Okay.
This has been beautiful though. I wonder what was maybe one main thing that you were doing during your teenage years that set you up to be a composer. And the second question is, what advice would you give to that teenage version of you?
Well, okay, you're. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be much help here because, like I said, I never diverted from the path of wanting to do, like I said earlier, something to do with sound, something to do with images.
Yeah.
So the one thing I was doing through my teenage years was playing. I was a session musician through my latter teen years. And I lost love of it. I did do it for about 5 years. Played guitar and keyboard for bands, for their records, you know. But the story was disappearing. That narrative was disappearing for me. And that was when I realised repeating a performance was something that wasn't for me. So I suppose if I could go back and say something to my teenage self who was sessioning, preparing to be someone who sessioned, I'd probably ask him because I wasted time. I mean, there was stuff I learnt, of course there was, but I would probably say to myself, remember, you're here for the story. You're here because you want something new, not to repeat something, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
That's amazing. No, I think that really sort of hits home and sort of find your own way, right? Find your path. And for you, like for some musicians, you know, being on a big stage, playing the same songs every night may feel like they've made it. But for you, who's a visual person who likes just new and exciting stories, that's just was never going to tickle your pickle, as it were. So finding your own way, I think, is a beautiful sort of way to look at it. So Greg, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. It's been really nice to sort of peel back the musical curtain, as it were, and hear about your wonderful approach to music and sort of the things that make you, which is, I think, really special and is why your music is wonderful. So you guys need to go and listen to all of Greg's music. If they type in your name on Spotify, will you come up?
Yes, Spotify, Apple Music, all those.
Superb. So I keep favouring Spotify here. I feel really bad.
What, you've been endorsed by him?
No, I haven't. I haven't at all. In no way. So I retract that. It's on all platforms, guys. It's on all platforms. Go check it out. You're going to love it. And especially the It Came From Below soundtrack, which Greg absolutely smashed. So thank you, Greg. I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you, Dan. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
I love music. I always call myself a frustrated musician, but now I can actually make music. I sort of taught myself how to do it with sort of logic and stuff. But I love the musicality of film, and I really admire people that are sort of music through and through. And to join me to talk about that is obviously the one and only Amelia Siaja.
I didn't know if you were going to intro me, and I was going to come in as your conscience, and I was going to say, Dan, you're not a frustrated musician. You're a musician. If you make music, you're a musician.
This is true. I think it's the inability to play either the piano or guitar that
frustrates
make
you.
Me feel like maybe that's the thing. I'm not a frustrated musician in the sense not a musician. I'm just genuinely a musician who's frustrated.
Yeah. That's a really important. It's important to differentiate those, I think. But of course, Greg is not a frustrated musician. Greg is a little bit of a wizard, isn't he?
He literally is. Literally is a wizard, at least according to my phone, anyway. Is just such a sound person through and through, and it really was a beautiful experience working with him because he had sound design and the soundscape of things in mind as a composer, so he knew sort of where he would fit into the process. In fact, there were certain bits where it was like, actually, no, Greg,
pull that out of the music because that's too sound designy, and we're gonna do that elsewhere. But then there were some bits where it's like, actually, no, strip that out of the sound design. Greg's score is sort of covering that base for us.
Yeah.
So it was really sort of beautiful that he sort of had the world of the film in his mind. Which sometimes you get, but in particular with Greg, it was really great to hear.
Definitely. And I think, it kept making me think about, which we've talked about before, is the which we talked about way back when we talked about horror films. We were talking about silence. And the use of silence and the use of music, and the use of sound as differentiated from music. Music that is over the top of the film, non-diegetic or diegetic. It's actually within the film. The characters are listening to the music. So there's just so many elements of this that, if you love music and you love movies, there are so many different ways, I think, that you can marry those two loves.
100%. We've just about got time for a question from one of our listeners. This one
Wonderful.
is from Barry. I didn't know anyone was still called Barry. But
I was just going to say, Barry, wow.
I know. It doesn't say where he's from. But anyway, Barry wants to basically create a score for his film. So he says, how do I score my film if I don't know any or can't afford any composers? Which is a valid and relevant question. Thank you, Barry. Do you have any thoughts on this, Amelia? I've got a couple.
I don't have a good answer, except that my only experience with something like this, it wasn't actually in film, it was in theater, and I directed a version, a new version that had just been written of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And it was very much
spooky.
Very spooky, and it was very much a melodrama. I leaned into it kind of being a melodrama. And so I wanted there to be this feeling in the theater the whole time. And so what I did, and this is really my piece of advice, is to, until you can't afford one, ask your friends. I asked my friends, who was a musician. She just created this track that was 4 minor chords played very slowly on repeat.
Nice.
And we just had that almost so quiet you couldn't hear it, but just under everybody's kind of level of hearing through the whole play.
Superb.
And so we had you walked into this like just weird sense of foreboding because minor keys kind of make your tummy feel weird. And so but so that is my advice is, until you can afford to pay someone, I bought her a beer, to say thank you, which you can't do for your friends unless you're 18. But, see what kind of trade you might be able to make with someone. If you know anybody who is a musician, might be a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, you'll be able to find musicians that are at different points in their journeys as well. You might know someone that maybe isn't ready to do like a 100-piece orchestral score on the computer, but might be able to produce something really simple on a guitar and piano that either matches the scale of your film or sort of contrasts it. And as long as it's one of the two and it's not just somewhere in the middle, then that's going to be really cool. Like if you've got an epic film but just a single guitar playing, that's beautiful. And vice versa, also, something very small instrument, great, beautiful. And there's also lots of places online as well. So free sound, people upload music to that. Just one thing I would advise, don't go on YouTube and type in royalty-free music, because royalty-free music doesn't mean you don't have to pay for it. Royalty-free music means there's no royalties owed. But sometimes people upload them to these YouTube channels and you very much do have to pay for a license and it's not clear. So royalty-free, be careful. Whereas on free sound you can tick Creative Commons 0, which basically means that they've waived the rights the musician has, so you can use it for anything. That's what I'd say. Anyway, time to go.
That's a very important thing, though, just to say, is that make sure you aren't in any kind of copyright infringement area, because that's where things can get really dicey, and a movie that you didn't spend any money on suddenly costs you a lot of money in legal fees.
100%. Don't get in that pickle.
No.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't
Stay
do
away.
it, friends.
See you guys soon.
See you soon. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.